This video is the second part in a multi-part retrospective, so if you're wondering why this starts so suddenly, you might want to go back and watch part 1.
Well, with all that said, let's actually get into the specifics. Now, there is an enormous amount to cover here, and it's difficult to figure out where to start. But I think the best starting point would actually be the controls, just because that's something that impacts every single aspect of the gameplay. So, yeah, it's a 3D Sonic game, so you know the controls are not going to be very good. They never are. Here, though, I have to say, at least by the very low standards of 3D Sonic, I'm actually mildly impressed. Because while there is plenty to complain about, it is also far from all bad. For one, simply running in this game feels amazing and truly unique from how it feels to run in any other game. They really sell to you the ludicrous speed and skating-like physics of Shadow's rocket boots. And for a Sonic game, that's honestly a good fucking start. Having simply running, not even jumping or anything like that, feel exciting and fun is probably pretty fucking good for a Sonic game. Genuinely, just simply running forward in this game feels so buttery smooth and so fast that a lot of my favorite moments in the entire game are sections where you simply get to sprint down massive runways, dodging obstacles, or chasing an enemy. The problem comes in when you have to make a sudden turn.
Step up and play.
Oh dear.
Just to clarify, all I did in that clip was change from holding down forward to pressing right instead.
Yeah, so I at least understand this restriction. If you didn't have these very sharp and sudden stops to your momentum while turning, then you would probably go accidentally flying off the map 10 times more often than you already do as it is. That being said, I can't lie, this always makes me nervous to attempt even just turning while running, because I don't know if Shadow is just going to lean a little bit in the direction I'm holding like I'm hoping he will, or Shadow is going to shoot from 100 miles per hour to 1 centimeter per century in the blink of an eye and shoot a hard 90 degrees to the right. There's a certain threshold where that line gets crossed, and often it feels difficult to avoid crossing that threshold by accident. That being said, the longer you play, the more you adjust, and while certainly I'd prefer this if it was more smoothly implemented, by the time I'd played for a good few hours, I no longer minded it too much. It still frustrated me from time to time, but by the same token, it was also enabling me to save myself from flying off an edge, or even occasionally allowed me to pull off some cool tricks and movement once I'd learned to use it to my advantage. So I could live with it. Alright, what about the camera? Oh. Well, it could be worse. It suffers from a little bit of early 3D camera syndrome. There are absolutely no in-game options to change camera controls. It is thankfully on the right stick as God intended, instead of on the bumpers or triggers like some backwards-ass early 3D control schemes had it, but it is inverted camera. Left is right and right is left. Except when you get into a turret section or bird section, then left is left and right is right, but then in those sections, up becomes down and down becomes up. So the inversions themselves become inverted, and the axes that were inverted before becomes uninverted, whereas the uninverted axes become inverted. What the fuck? Why is it like this? Okay, not a fan of that, but not necessarily a deal breaker for me personally either. I can put up with it. While inverted camera tends to really fuck me up at first when I'm not expecting it, I do find that I can adjust to it relatively quickly, and once I've adjusted, it feels the same as playing without inverted camera. What does irk me a little more is something that to some people might sound less egregious, but I actually think really hurts this game. That being that there are absolutely no ways to make the camera change the speed at which it turns. There is no sensitivity controls in the options, and the camera movement does not scale with how hard you press in a direction. The camera's default move speed is extremely slow for my tastes, and a common issue for me in this game is running into situations in high-speed sections of gameplay where seeing around a corner is literally physically impossible because the camera is turning 10 times slower than Shadow is running. This not only leads to a lot of blind jumps, but it also leads to a lot of getting hit by off-screen enemies before you are even able to turn the camera to see them, while having to react quickly to things in combat sections and boss fights. This, unfortunately, is something you cannot make much better for yourself by just getting used to it, because it's not even necessarily that it's difficult to control. It's more that even when you control it perfectly, it's physically too slow to do what you want it to do fast enough. But at the very least, that covers basic movement. So what about Shadow's moveset outside of just running and looking around? Well, the X button is jump as usual, no problems there thankfully, and X in midair does the homing attack as you'd expect. But the homing attack itself varies wildly in quality. It's always satisfying to use, but the lock-on from this is sometimes borderline fucking brain dead. I've probably died more to the homing attack having a seizure trying to throw me off the map into a pit of death while playing this game than any other enemy or obstacle. It's usually fine, but every now and then you will homing attack directly at a group of multiple enemies directly in front of your face and watch in disbelief as the homing attack fails to lock onto any of the multiple enemies within breathing distance of you and instead sends you over all of them and into the insta-death depths below. By the same token though, it also likes to do the complete opposite. I have genuinely been standing directly next to an enemy one step to my right and homing attacked at them before, only to watch the attack auto-lock onto a completely different enemy that's completely off screen to the left side I didn't even know was there half the time, that's so far away the homing attack has to rotate the camera 180 degrees and leap triple the distance of a normal jump just to hit them. Thankfully, when the latter one happens, it usually doesn't lead to death, but it does slow you down if you're going for a fast time and your homing attack sends you in the opposite direction you want to go to hit an enemy that you weren't even trying to hit.
Look! It's a war zone!
Square acts as your attack button. When Shadow doesn't have a weapon, he'll just kick, and he can do this mid-air. But the range is so pathetic that this is essentially just completely useless. I get that this is supposed to be short range to encourage you to use weapons, but this button actually just does nothing when you don't have a weapon. You need to be within kissing range of an enemy without actually technically touching them for this to connect. And when, alternatively, you could just jump at them and use the homing attack, clearly that becomes the more preferable option. That being said, once you get your hands on a gun, how does it feel to use? Alright, honestly. I think a lot of people laughed at the idea of Sonic with guns because of the whole, edginess thing. But removing the overly edgy issue from the equation, I honestly think it's kind of a good call. I mean, the game does have melee weapons, but the melee combat is just about as awkward and janky as you'd expect. The guns, on the other hand, feel fine to use, and pair super well in boss fights with Shadow's insane speed. In fact, I think the best moments of this game are the moments which get to show off both the fun combat with the guns and the satisfying speed of Shadow's rocket boots at the same time. And also the fact that firing them in midair allows you to float until you stop firing is also super useful, since it allows you to even occasionally use that as a pure movement tool as well, rather than just a way to attack.
My only gripe with the weapons in this game is the fact that, well, the control scheme doesn't really allow for careful aim, and that I understand. While aim is obviously a factor, the game doesn't really expect you to have super great aim, and it does have aim assist, which I do think it should have. In fact, it's pretty strong aim assist, which I'm happy to say. It definitely meshes very well with the good movement. I know you could say, oh, but the aim should be real, but honestly, it's not a fucking first-person shooter. It's a 3D platformer first and a shooter second. And as a result, I really think if they didn't have aim assist, this game would be fucking torture. Here's the problem though. The aiming is always fine so long as the aim assist actually kicks in. But the aim assist isn't the best at knowing when it's supposed to kick in or not. Don't get me wrong, there's the usual issue you'd expect of the aim assist sometimes locks onto the wrong target. Sometimes there's just two targets you want to shoot, and the aim assist locks onto someone before it locks onto another one when you want to kill them in the opposite order. And don't get me wrong, that is a frustration with the aim assist, but overall, thankfully in this game, it very, very, very rarely actually matters. It doesn't happen a whole lot, and when it does, it basically never ends up actually hurting you because of the fact that, well, you can basically spam fire most weapons in this game, and most enemies die in only a couple shots. So usually, if you do kill an enemy, maybe you didn't need to kill because the auto-lock went onto the wrong enemy, it's fine, it probably only took like 1 or 2 bullets, and now you're going to be shooting the enemy next to them. All it means is the enemy you wanted to kill maybe takes 1/10 of a second longer to die. So yeah, that's not all too bad. What is kind of pretty bad is aim assist simply not working up close. Because of that fact, it actually makes it so that it is the most difficult to hit enemies that are right in your face. I swear to God, I wouldn't be surprised if it's literally just not possible to hit enemies if the aim assist doesn't kick in. Because I swear sometimes I see these bullets clip directly through the limbs of the enemies I'm shooting when the aim assist doesn't kick in. And then the second it does, then suddenly you can't miss a shot. No matter how absolutely stupid the angle you're shooting from is. Somehow it will always hit so long as you've got a decent distance between you. But the second you're point blank, it doesn't matter if Shadow is directly facing the enemy, you press shoot and I guarantee it won't connect. This is really weird to get used to because it's obviously counterintuitive for enemies closer to be harder to hit. And it is annoying to have to adapt to, but in fairness, it is only in a short close. The only other time that the aim assist sometimes has issues is that obviously it's not possible for you to aim up or down. And sometimes you'll be caught in situations where you will have to shoot something above or below you and you'll just have to hope the aim assist kicks in. This is also not perfect and it is frustrating not knowing whether your shots are going to hit or not because you're not allowed to aim up or down. You have to hope the aim assist does it for you. It definitely just makes a few sections a little bit more stressful than they need to be. Even though 99% of the time it does work, it's terrifying ever being thrown into a situation where if you miss this one shot, you're dead and you've not got much of a window for it, and you just know, regardless of whether I line up this shot correctly or not, I still have to rely on the aim assist to do its job, and if it doesn't, I just die here, even if I did everything correctly. But as I say, I won't complain too much about it because it's not a very common issue. At least definitely not compared to the whole not being able to shoot up close enemies. Circle does a lot of things. Maybe too many. If you're not moving, it charges up a spin dash. If you're moving, it starts a slide attack, which slows you down and can be backflipped out of by jumping. If you're moving into a line of rings, it activates a light dash, instantly setting you to a ludicrously fast speed moving in the direction of the line of rings. If you're standing on a weapon that is different to the one you're holding, it swaps weapons. And if you're standing on a checkpoint and stop for a brief moment, it's also the button that you use to bring up the checkpoint warp menu where you can teleport to any other checkpoint in the level you've already touched. So I think you can see the problem here. For a game which barely uses the triangle button, has R1 and R2 do the same things, and doesn't even have L1 or L2 do anything, it does feel kind of unnecessary to slap so many actions onto one button. I understand that the circle button is less out of the way to press than the triggers are, so I think it makes sense for things like the spin dash and maybe the light dash, but swapping weapons or warping between checkpoints easily could have been on a different button. It's not the end of the world, but it is a common issue that I walk into a weapon or checkpoint and press circle only to spin dash off of it and realize, oh wait, I forgot, I have to walk onto it, make sure I'm dead center, wait one more second for the button prompt to appear, then press circle, and then it'll do what I want. For a game that heavily incentivizes and rewards speed, that's pretty annoying. Not to mention the frustration of dying because you had to light dash over a pit to progress, only for Shadow to start sliding to his death instead because you pressed circle 1 nanosecond too early. You can't even just press it late in response because touching the ring collects it, meaning you can't light dash with it anymore. So you have to press it just before touching it, but also not so early that you slide. And while we're on the topic of the light dash, I've got to say the light dash in this game is the source of so much of my enjoyment in this game, but also so much of my hatred. I was never really a fan of the light dash as a concept until playing this game, where the light dash makes replaying levels once you know the layout feel like a fucking roller coaster. The light dash makes the game a fucking blast when it works, but oh god when it doesn't. I already mentioned how pressing it early starts a slide, killing your speed, and pressing it late means you lose the ring that you needed to start the dash in the first place. But the worst thing by far is the sideways light dash. Sometimes you will light dash directly into a line of rings only to watch Shadow go careening off the left side of the screen at light speed rather than running straight down the ring line with that speed because you happen to come at the ring at a slight angle. This obviously leads to deaths every now and then, but even when it doesn't, it leads to a lot of lost time. And if you're using the light dash in a level, you almost certainly care about that time. Because the light dash, if anything, if you're just trying to get to the end of the level and don't care about going fast, is kind of an obstacle. Because the light dash, if you're just trying to reach the end of the level, actually isn't very helpful.
There's only a couple moments where it has to be used to progress, and often it's just a way to make you go insanely fast, while also putting you at enormous risk of going flying into an enemy. Essentially, you're only going to use the light dash once you've already experienced enough and confident enough that you not only think you want to beat the level, but you want to beat it fast. So these sideways light dashes lead to you losing a lot of time, and they often completely break your flow. You'll be just at the peak of the enjoyment of this game, watching Shadow just fucking zipping through an entire level, destroying everything in his path, jumping off walls, sliding off of roller coasters, and then suddenly hits one ring, presses the light dash button, and zoop, oh, I'm going in the opposite direction, and I lost all my speed all of a sudden. Lovely. I swear to God, it feels like these rings try to fuck me up half the time. I come in at like a 5-degree angle, press the light dash button, and the ring just goes, "Did you mean hard 90-degree turn into the abyss?" All that being said, I wouldn't trade the light dash for anything else in the world. For as much as it may piss me off to deal with its bullshit, nothing compares to the bliss of being able to pull off a move that kills your momentum, only for the light dash to allow you to instantly shoot back to maximum speed, shoot past a huge chunk of the level, and end off that flashy leap by cancelling it into a course-correcting homing attack onto an enemy up ahead that ensures you land exactly where you wanted to, despite your ludicrous and uncontrollable speed.
When you stick to the wall during a triangle jump, you can run for a little bit. It's really just a little bit.
And that just leaves one last piece of movement to note, the triangle jump. Oh boy, I hated these things at first, and over time they've definitely grown on me, but I'm certainly not going to pretend their implementation is smooth. They're sort of like wall jumps. If you ever run into a section of the level where you have two walls close enough to each other, jumping at one of the walls will give you a brief moment of being able to wall run. If you don't press anything, after a second, Shadow will just fall off. But if you press jump, Shadow will jump to the other wall and keep running. This is pretty satisfying when it works, but it definitely doesn't work as often as you'd hope. Thankfully, after a while, I did figure out there was a pattern to what caused some attempts to fail, which helped me to make the triangle jump far more consistent. But even still, I get nervous I'm still going to randomly fall to my death whenever I have to do one of these things, even once I figured out the trick to make it happen a whole lot less. Essentially, once you reach the end, your final jump will always go diagonally down instead of diagonally flat. And that's just to put you back on the ground, but it seems the game is really bad at detecting when it should do this. So if you jump from a lower part of the wall, you'll often see Shadow jump diagonally down into his death just inches away from clearing the gap. As a result, the trick is to begin from as high up as possible, since you can't gain or lose height while triangle jumping. The higher up you are, the more likely the diagonal down triangle jump at the end puts you on solid ground rather than into the pit. As far as I can tell, there's no limit to the amount of jumps you can do whenever you come across these walls, so it doesn't matter whether you begin further forward or further back. The only thing that matters is that you begin as high up as possible. I think I had a lot more trouble with this move to start because I thought it was more important to start further forward so that I wouldn't have to spend as much time wall running. So I traded height for distance, only for Shadow to plummet to his death almost every time. Overall, it's true that triangle jump is kind of gimmicky. It's mostly just used as something that looks cool, but rarely used in a genuine gameplay mechanic. A lot of the time it acts as a glorified QuickTime event where it's just like, oh, this is the bit where we triangle jump. This is the bit where I press X 3 times. However, while it is rare, every now and then I've been able to mix in a triangle jump or two mid-combat to dodge enemy bullets. And though those circumstances are rare, when you do get the opportunity, I can't deny it. It feels super badass to wall jump over hazards and between bullets to approach your enemies instead of simply just running around them.
I'm also happy to say that having played a little bit longer than I had when I first recorded that segment of the video, that honestly now, triangle jumps basically feel 100% consistent. They definitely take some getting used to, but now that I feel that I'm fully used to using them, I never fuck up with them anymore. It really does seem like the main two things you just really need to keep in mind is that whole height thing, and you need to get a feel for how long you're allowed to wall run before you'll fall off. Initially, I'm not sure how I got this impression, but I got the feeling that if you waited for even a split second of the wall run animation, that if you pressed jump, your input would just get eaten and you would just fall off and it would ignore the fact you pressed jump. Maybe I just got a lag spike one time and that really did happen just by coincidence the first time I tried it, but by this point I've realized that actually you can press jump pretty late and Shadow will still respond. As a result, there were a couple sections in the game where you did have to triangle jump between hazards, but a lot of the time when I first got to these it felt like luck getting through these. We just had to hope the triangle jump happened to not align with these hazards, but you couldn't really do much to control where you were actually going, and so if you bumped into them, it wouldn't really be your fault. But now that I realize that the game is a little bit more lenient than I thought on your input window for being able to wall jump, now I actually realize that these sections are actually skill-based and not just, oh, you get bullshitted sometimes. So with all that said, honestly, I'm really warming up to the triangle jump. I actually do really like it by this point. I just definitely think we could have gotten a little bit more info on how to use it, because certainly if you just jump at a wall and keep pressing jump, it feels very, very inconsistent.
Overall, the controls in this game will never be perfect, no matter how well you adapt to them. But they will absolutely improve, I can assure you. The difference between your gameplay when you first pick up this game and your gameplay 10 or so hours in will be immense. My first time playing the first level in this game genuinely looks something like this.
We're done for! Come here! Let's you and me show them things. Nice going, Shadow. That's the ticket.
But now, when I play Westopolis, it looks something more like this.
Ready to fuck? Hey, Shadow. Long time no see. Looks like these black creatures really mean business. Let's you and me show them a thing or two. Cover fire! Hey, Shadow! That's one of the cakes. That Chaos Emerald you can unlock on...
I shall follow and observe. Start by finishing off these soldiers and dare to fight.
Nice job, Shadow! Hey, not bad! Laser strikes cause explosions, so stay clear of them, too! Yeah, smash them up! You're halfway there! Keep it up, Shadow!
Behold the ultimate power!
We need assistance! Let's run along that fallen crane! They don't... Nice job, Shadow! Looks like this cave has been robbed by those black creatures. They grab these red fruits all over them. Watch out for the lasers coming from above. Come on, let's do it. There he is! Fire! Fire! I repeat, this is not a great... Man, what the heck is HQ doing? Yeah, smash him up! I don't know who or what these black creatures are, but we can't let them get away with this. This is the don't touch the red fruit. Just a few more. Give it your best shot. Nice job. Looks like most of the citizens have been evacuated. I feel so sorry. Hey, just what are these black creatures? Yeah, smash them up! Hey, Shadow, there are still some black creatures left to take out. Those monsters are out of control. Looks like our guest has decided to pay us another visit. Let's show them a good time. That's all of them.
Alright, so I realize I'm probably not selling you on this game so far with all this hubbub around the controls. But this is the best part, because we're through the worst of it now. Because now that we've gotten through the slop, believe it or not, I actually think this game has some very good ideas that help to make it the single most enjoyable 3D Sonic game I have played so far. The only problem is just, once again, Jesus Christ, where to even start.